I sacrificed 10 years of my life and $700,000 to save our family estate from foreclosure, only for my mother to smile and gift the deed to my unemployed brother. They uninvited me to the celebration, so I made one phone call that turned their victory lap into an eviction. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The air in my parents' dining room always smelled of lavender and old polish, a scent that used to comfort me but now just made my stomach churn. I was sitting at the mahogany table, the same table where I had done my homework as a child, the same table where I had sat 3 weeks ago and signed the check that drained my entire investment portfolio. My hands were resting on the placemat, trembling slightly, though I tried to hide it by clasping them together. Across from me, my mother, Patricia, was glowing. She looked younger than she had in years, the stress lines around her eyes smoothed out by the relief of financial salvation. Beside her sat my brother, Ryan. At 24, he still had the boyish, expectant look of someone who had never really heard the word no. He was scrolling on his phone, barely acknowledging my presence, heavily tapping the screen with his thumb. "Alice, darling, are you listening?" Patricia asked, her voice light, almost musical. She reached out and patted my hand, her rings clicking against the table. I said, "We have some wonderful news regarding the graduation party." I blinked, pulling myself out of the haze of exhaustion that had been my constant companion for the last decade. "I'm listening, Mom. The party. Saturday. I already requested the day off." Patricia exchanged a quick, loaded glance with Ryan. Ryan smirked, finally looking up from his phone. There was something in that look, a mix of pity and triumph, that sent a cold spike of adrenaline down my spine. "Well, that's actually what we need to talk about," Patricia said, withdrawing her hand. She picked up her wine glass, swirling the red liquid slowly. "You see, this isn't just a graduation party anymore. It's a housewarming." I frowned, confused. "A housewarming, but you've lived here for 30 years, I don't understand." Patricia took a slow sip, savoring the moment. "Ryan has worked so hard for his degree, Alice, so hard, and we realize that he needs a fresh start, a leg up in the world, so your father and I decided. Well, we've decided to transfer the deed of the house to Ryan, as a graduation gift." The room went silent. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to amplify, booming like a heartbeat. "Excuse me," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "You're doing what?" "We're gifting the house to Ryan," she repeated, louder this time, as if I were hard of hearing. "He's going to turn the garage into a studio. It's going to be perfect for his art." My vision blurred at the edges. "Mom, I paid the mortgage, I paid it off, 3 weeks ago. $700,000, that was everything I had. We agreed. You said this was for the family legacy, but that I would be the one taking over the title when you moved to Florida." Ryan let out a short, sharp laugh. "God, Alice, you're always so transactional. It's family. You helped the family. Now the family is helping me." "Helping you?" I stood up, my chair scraping violently against the floorboards. "I didn't help the family, Ryan. I saved it. I paid for the roof over your head because Mom was crying on the phone saying the bank was coming in 30 days. Patricia slammed her wine glass down. "Sit down, Alice. You are making a scene. Yes, you paid the money and we appreciate it. But Ryan is your brother. He needs security. You have your fancy career, your data architect salary. You're fine. He needs this asset." "I have that salary because I work 80 hours a week," I shouted, the control finally snapping. "I don't have a house, Mom. I rent a 1-bedroom apartment because I was saving every penny to pay off your debt." "And that was your choice," Patricia said icily. "But the decision is made, the paperwork is being drawn up, the house is Ryan's." She paused, looking me up and down with a sneer that I recognized from my childhood. The look that said I was being difficult, ungrateful, unlovable. "And," she added, delivering the final blow, "given your current attitude, I don't think it's appropriate for you to attend the party on Saturday. We want a celebratory atmosphere. Not this. Bitterness. You're uninviting me, I asked, the words tasting like ash. From the party for the house I bought. For Ryan's house, she corrected. Yes, you're not invited. I looked at Ryan. He just shrugged, a smug grin plastering his face. Sorry, sis, vibes only, we don't want drama. I stood there feeling the floor tilt beneath me. The betrayal wasn't just in the money. It was in the ease with which they discarded me. They had taken my life's blood, my sweat, my future, and handed it to the golden boy like it was a toy. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of a terminal illness. It was the deliberate murder of my trust. The drive back to my apartment is a blur in my memory. I remember the rain starting to fall, heavy drops hitting the windshield of my 10-year-old sedan. A car I had kept running with duct tape and prayers, because I couldn't justify a car payment when the family fund needed feeding. I pulled over 3 times. The first time was because I couldn't see through the tears. The second time was because I had to vomit on the side of the highway, my body physically rejecting the reality of what had just happened. The third time, I just screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw, hitting the steering wheel until my palms bruised. $700,000. It wasn't just a number, it was 10 years. It was the vacations I didn't take. The friends' weddings I missed because I couldn't afford the flight. The dating life I sacrificed because who wants to date a woman who lives like a pauper despite earning 6 figures? It was the nights I slept under my desk at the office to meet a deadline for a bonus that went straight into my mother's account the next morning. When I finally unlocked the door to my apartment, the silence greeted me like a tomb. It was small, cramped, and smelled of the neighbors' cooking. I sank onto the floor in the hallway, not even bothering to take off my wet coat. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Patricia. I know you're upset, but please try to be happy for your brother. He's had a hard year. We'll discuss a repayment plan for you in a few years when he's settled. Love, Mom. A repayment plan, in a few years, when he's settled. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a satisfying thud, but the screen didn't crack. It just glowed there on the carpet, a digital eye mocking me. Ryan had a hard year. Ryan had spent the last year backpacking through Europe on self-discovery trips funded by credit cards that Patricia paid off, using money I sent her for groceries. Ryan had changed his major 4 times. Ryan had never worked a full 40-hour week in his life. I dragged myself to the kitchen and poured a glass of tap water, my hands shaking so badly I spilled half of it down my front. I leaned against the counter, closing my eyes, trying to breathe. The image of Patricia's face, that smug, self-righteous satisfaction, burned behind my eyelids. She truly believed she had won. She believed that because she was Mom, she could rewrite the laws of fairness and I would just roll over and take it like I always had. She thought she held all the cards. She thought the deed was hers to give. I opened my eyes and looked at the calendar on my fridge. Saturday, 3 days away, the housewarming. A memory surfaced through the red haze of my rage. A memory from 5 years ago. It was a rainy afternoon, much like this one. I was sitting in a lawyer's office with my grandfather before he passed. He was a stern man, a man who didn't trust Patricia's spending habits and certainly didn't trust Ryan's work ethic. He had loved them, yes, but he knew them. I remembered the smell of the leather books in that office. I remembered Uncle Mitch standing in the corner, looking solemn. I remembered the specific weight of the pen in my hand when my grandfather asked me to sign as a witness to the restructuring of the family trust. My breath hitched. I scrambled for my laptop bag, ripping the zipper open. I tore through old files, tax returns, and receipts until I found it. A scanned PDF copy of a document I hadn't looked at in years. I opened the file, my eyes scanning the legal jargon, looking for Article 4, Section B. In the event that the encumbrance on the primary estate is satisfied by a party other than the life tenant. I read it twice, then a third time. A cold, hard calmness settled over me, replacing the panic. The tears dried up instantly. Patricia was planning a party. She was ordering catering. She was telling all her friends that she was the benevolent matriarch gifting her son a kingdom. She was basking in the glory of her generosity, funded entirely by my sacrifice. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. To understand why this betrayal broke me, you have to understand the history of the family fund. I have been the designated adult in my family since I was 12 years old. My father, while a kind man, was passive to a fault. He disappeared into the background, letting Patricia run the show. And Patricia ran the show like a dictator with a shopping addiction. Growing up, we always had the best clothes, the newest cars, and the most expensive vacations. It wasn't until I was in college that I realized it was all a mirage. Hey, we're drowning in debt. The house, my grandfather's pride and joy, had been remortgaged 3 times to fund Patricia's image of wealth. When I landed my job as a junior data analyst straight out of college, Patricia didn't congratulate me. She sat me down and showed me the foreclosure notices. She cried. She told me they would be on the street. She told me it was my duty. So I stepped up. I didn't just help, I took over. For 10 years, I lived a double life. At work, I was a rising star, a senior architect managing massive databases for Fortune 500 companies. I wore tailored suits I bought at thrift stores. I ate instant noodles for dinner while my colleagues went to steakhouses. I drove a clunker while managing millions of dollars in corporate assets. Every spare cent went to the mortgage. $700,000. It was a mountain, and I climbed it inch by bleeding inch because I believed in the promise. The promise was simple: pay this off, save the house, and when we retire to the condo in Florida, the estate is yours. It's your legacy, Alice. I wanted that house. Not for the status, but because it was the only place I had ever felt safe, specifically the library my grandfather had built. It was my sanctuary. Now, let's talk about the people who took that dream away. Patricia is a woman who believes the world is a stage, and she is the lead actress. She constructs reality to suit her narrative. If she spends $5,000 on a handbag, it's an investment. If she forgets my birthday, it's because I've been so overwhelmed with everyone else's needs. She is a master of gaslighting. She can look you in the eye, steal your wallet, and convince you that you lost it yourself. And then there is Ryan. Ryan is the masterpiece of Patricia's enabling. He was a cute kid, and he learned early on that cuteness was a currency. He never did chores. He never had a summer job. If he failed a class, it was the teacher's fault. If he got a speeding ticket, the cop was biased. He graduated with a degree in general studies. After 6 years, a degree I largely paid for. He fancies himself an artist, though I've never seen him paint anything other than a Warhammer figurine. He has a way of looking at people, especially me, like we are NPCs in the video game of his life. We exist solely to facilitate his quest. But the most dangerous person in this equation wasn't Patricia or Ryan. It was the man I needed to call. Uncle Mitch. Mitch is Patricia's older brother. He is everything she is not: quiet, calculating, and ruthlessly practical. He's a contract lawyer who retired early because he made enough money fixing other people's messes. He had been the executor of grandfather's estate. He had always been kind to me, in a distant, observant way. He would watch Patricia's theatrics with a raised eyebrow, saying nothing. He would watch me handing over checks, saying nothing. I had always assumed his silence was indifference. I had assumed he didn't care that his sister was bleeding his niece dry. But as I stared at the PDF on my laptop screen, I realized that Uncle Mitch wasn't indifferent. He was waiting. The document I was reading was the trust agreement governing the house. My grandfather had been terrified that Patricia would lose the property, so he had placed the deed in a trust. Patricia and Dad were life tenants. They had the right to live there, provided they paid the bills. But there was a clause, the Savior Clause, as my grandfather had jokingly called it during that meeting 5 years ago. If the mortgage is satisfied in full by a direct descendant other than the life tenant, the trust shall immediately dissolve, and the title shall transfer to said descendant to ensure the asset's preservation. Uncle Mitch was the trustee. He was the only one who could trigger the transfer. Patricia clearly didn't know this clause existed, or she had forgotten. She assumed that once the bank was paid, the house was hers to give to Ryan. I looked at the clock. 9:00 p.m. Uncle Mitch would be awake. He was a night owl. I picked up my phone, the screen cracked from where I'd thrown it, and dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. "Alice, it's late." "Uncle Mitch," I said, my voice steady, stripped of all emotion. "Mom just told me she's gifting the house to Ryan on Saturday, and she uninvited me to the party." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint sound of a television in the background, then the click of a mute button. "She did what?" Mitch asked, his tone dropping an octave. "She thinks she owns the deed, Mitch. She thinks because the bank is paid, the trust is moot. She's going to announce it on Saturday." Another silence, then a sound I didn't expect, a low, dry chuckle. "She always was arrogant," Mitch muttered. "She didn't call me. She didn't ask about the title transfer. She just assumed." "I want to enforce Article 4, Section B," I said. "I have the wire transfer. Receipts proving the $700,000 came from my account. I want the house, Mitch, today." "Alice," Mitch sighed, "if we do this, you know what happens. It's nuclear. She will never forgive you. Ryan will never forgive you." "They uninvited me, Mitch," I said, feeling the heat rise in my chest again. "They took my life savings and kicked me to the curb. I don't want their forgiveness. I want my house." Mitch paused. I held my breath. He was the gatekeeper. If he refused, if he sided with his sister, I would have to sue, and that would take years I didn't have. "Meet me at my office tomorrow at 8:00 a.m., Mitch said finally. "Bring your receipts. And Alice." "Yes." "Don't tell them, not yet." "Why?" "Because," Mitch said, and I could hear the grim smile in his voice, "if they want a show on Saturday, let's give them a show. You're going to that party." The next morning, the city was draped in a gray, persistent drizzle that matched my mood perfectly. I arrived at Uncle Mitch's office at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. It was a small, unassuming building in the older part of town, nestled between a bakery and a dry cleaner's, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. When Mitch unlocked the door, he looked tired. He was a tall man, thinning gray hair combed back meticulously, wearing a cardigan that had seen better days. But his eyes were sharp. He ushered me in without a word, locking the door behind us and flipping the sign to closed. "Coffee," he offered, gesturing to a pot in the corner. "No thanks, I just want to get this done." I sat down across from his cluttered desk and pulled a thick manila envelope from my bag. "Here, every wire transfer, every bank statement, the cashier's check for the final lump sum. It's all traced directly from my personal accounts." Mitch put on his reading glasses and began to sift through the papers. The room was silent except for the rustle of paper and the ticking of a wall clock. I watched him, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was the moment. If there was a loophole, if I had missed something, it would all be for nothing. After 10 agonizing minutes, he looked up. "It's airtight, Alice. You've satisfied the condition perfectly. The trust is obligated to transfer the title to you." "So, what do we do?" I asked, leaning forward. "Do we file it now? Do we send them a letter?" Mitch leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his chin. We could file the deed transfer today, but the recording office takes a few days to process. Legally, the moment I sign the trustee deed granting it to you, it's yours, but public record lags behind." "I don't care about public record right now," I said. "I care about stopping them." "If we tell them now," Mitch said slowly, "Patricia will fight. She'll file an injunction. She'll claim undue influence. She'll drag this out in probate court for months, maybe years, while living in the house and letting Ryan destroy it. She's irrational, Alice, you know that. She'll burn the house down before she lets you have it. He was right. Patricia operated on scorched earth tactics. If she knew she was losing, she would make sure there was nothing left to win. So how do we get her out? I asked. We let her hang herself, Mitch said, his voice dropping. On Saturday, she plans to publicly gift the house to Ryan. She's going to hand him a ceremonial key. She's invited the neighbors, some of your dad's old business partners. She wants an audience. I know, I said bitterly, and I'm not invited. You are now, Mitch said. He opened his drawer and pulled out a fresh legal document. This is a trustee deed. I prepared it last night. Once I sign this and notarize it, the property is yours. You walk into that party not as a guest, but as the owner. He paused, looking at me with a seriousness that chilled me. But you need to be ready, Alice. When you drop this hammer, there is no going back. This destroys the family dynamic forever. Are you sure you can handle that? I thought about the repayment plan. I thought about Ryan's smirk. I thought about the 10 years of instant noodles. Give me the pen, I said. Mitch nodded. He signed the document, stamped it with his notary seal, and handed it to me. Congratulations, you own a $1.2 million estate. Now, he added, we need to secure the perimeter. If we're going to evict them, we need grounds beyond just ownership. We need to prove they are a liability to the property immediately. How do we do that? I'm the trustee until this document is recorded, Mitch explained. I have the right to inspect the property, and I have the right to bring a contractor to assess for insurance purposes. You know a guy. I smiled, a cold, hard smile. I'm a data architect for a construction firm, Mitch. I know everyone. By noon, I had hired a private home inspector, a friend of a friend who owed me a favor. We didn't tell Patricia, we just drove B. Why and what we saw from the street was enough to start the file. Ryan's car was parked on the front lawn, leaving deep ruts in the pristine grass. There were piles of what looked like construction debris near the side gate. Ryan's studio renovation had apparently already started, likely without permits. I took photos, dozens of them. Then I went to the bank. I opened a new account solely for the house expenses. I transferred the last of my savings, about $2,000, into it. It wasn't much, but it was a start. My phone buzzed. It was Ryan. Yo, Mom says you're crying about the party. Don't show up seriously. It'll be awkward. Just send a card or something. I typed back. Don't worry, Ryan, I won't ruin your big day. I'll make it unforgettable. I hit send. Saturday arrived with a bright, mocking sunshine. The weather was perfect for a garden party. I parked my beat-up sedan 2 blocks away. I didn't want them to see me coming. I wore a sharp black blazer and trousers, my boardroom armor. In my bag, I carried the trustee deed and the photos of the lawn. I walked toward the house. I could hear the music from down the street. It was a jazz band Patricia had splurged. I could smell barbecue. As I turned the corner, I saw the scene. The front yard was filled with people. White folding chairs were set up. There was a balloon arch that said, "Congrats RYAN and New Beginnings." I walked up the driveway. The first person to spot me was my Aunt Carol. Her eyes went wide, and she nudged her husband. A ripple of silence followed me as I moved through the crowd. I wasn't just the uninvited guest, I was the ghost at the feast. Patricia was standing on the front porch, holding a microphone. Ryan was next to her, holding a glass of champagne. They were beaming. And so, Patricia was saying, her voice amplified by the speakers, "It is with such pride that we give this home, this foundation, to the next generation. Ryan, my baby, this is yours." She held up a large, gold-painted ceremonial key. The crowd applauded politely. Ryan stepped forward to take it. "Excuse me," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the applause like a knife. I was standing at the foot of the porch stairs. Patricia froze. The smile didn't leave her face, but her eyes turned to steel. "Alice, I told you." "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, walking up the first step. "You can't gift this house, Mom." Ryan laughed into the microphone. Oh God, here she goes, jealous much. It's not jealousy, Ryan, I said, reaching into my bag. It's the law. I pulled out the deed. This is the trustee deed. Uncle Mitch signed it over to me on Thursday. Pursuant to the terms of grandfather's trust, since I paid the mortgage in full, the title transferred to me. Automatically. The silence was absolute now. The jazz band had stopped playing. Patricia's face went white. She looked at the paper in my hand, then at me. That's a lie. Mitch wouldn't do that. Mitch is standing right there, I said, pointing to the back of the crowd. Everyone turned. Uncle Mitch stepped forward looking somber. He nodded once. She's right, Patricia. The trust is clear. You don't own the house. You never did. You were a tenant. And once the mortgage was paid by Alice, your tenancy ended. This is ridiculous, Patricia shrieked, the microphone feedback squealing. I am your mother. I live here. You can't just steal my house. I didn't steal it, I said, my voice rising. I bought it. I paid $700,000 for it. While you bought purses and Ryan went on vacations, I bought every brick, every shingle, and every blade of grass you're standing on. Ryan stepped forward, his face red. You're lying. You're just trying to ruin my day. Mom, call the cops. Get her out of here. Actually, I said, turning to look at the crowd, since this is my private property and since I didn't authorize this gathering, I'm going to have to ask everyone to leave. Now. The guests began to murmur. People started looking at their watches, shuffling their feet. No one wanted to be part of a domestic dispute. You can't do this, Ryan yelled. He grabbed the ceremonial key from Patricia and threw it at me. It bounced harmlessly off my shoulder. This is MY house, Mom promised. Mom promised something she didn't have, I said calmly. And Ryan, that studio renovation you started, the one without permits, that's destruction of property. I've already documented it. Patricia dropped the microphone. It hit the porch with a loud thud. She looked small suddenly. Old. Alice, how could you, after everything we've done for you? Everything you've done to me, I corrected. I looked at the guests. The party is over. Please clear the premises. The guests scattered like roaches when the lights turn on. Within 10 minutes, the yard was empty save for the scattered chairs and the deflating balloon arch. The confrontation moved inside. Patricia, Dad, WH. O had been hiding in the kitchen, Ryan and me. Uncle Mitch waited on the porch, acting as a silent sentry. You are going to sign that deed back over to me right now, Patricia hissed, pacing the living room. This is fraud, I'll sue you. It's not fraud, it's a contract, I said, sitting down at the dining table, my table. And you can sue, but you have no money for a lawyer, do you? Because I'm not paying for it anymore. I have money, Ryan shouted. I can get a loan. You have a credit score of 500, Ryan, I said. I know. I saw the credit checks when I was fixing your mess last year. Dad, say something, Ryan pleaded, turning to our father. Dad looked at me, then at the floor. Alice, maybe we can work something out. Ryan was really counting on this. Dad, I said softly, you let them bleed me dry for 10 years. You watched me work myself to death and you didn't say a word. You don't get a vote anymore. Patricia stopped pacing. She took a deep breath, composing herself. The mask was sliding back into place. Fine, you own the house. Whatever, but we live here. We have tenants' rights. You can't kick us out. We'll stay and Ryan will stay and you can just be the landlord if that makes you feel powerful. I anticipated that, I said. I pulled another folder from my bag. If you want to stay, that's fine. But since the trust is dissolved, this is no longer a family arrangement. It's a rental agreement. I slid a document across the table. This is a standard lease. Based on comparable properties in this neighborhood, the rent is $4,500 a month, plus utilities. We can't afford that, Patricia gasped. We're on a fixed income. Then you can't afford to live here, I said simply, but that's not all. I turned to page 2. Ryan is not listed on the lease. He is an unauthorized occupant. He has 48 hours to vacate. If he is found on the premises after Monday, It's a breach of lease and grounds for immediate eviction of all tenants. You're kicking your brother out? Dad asked, horrified. He's 24, I said. He can get a job, or he can live with his friends. But he is not living in my house for free while treating me like dirt. I won't sign it, Patricia spat. I won't sign a damn thing. If you don't sign, I said, then you are squatters, and I will begin formal eviction proceedings on Monday morning. It will take 30 days, and then the sheriff will come and put your things on the curb, and everyone, the neighbors, your bridge club, the church, will watch. I leaned in close. Do you really want that scene, Mom? Do you want everyone to know that your daughter evicted you because you tried to defraud her? Patricia stared at me. Her eyes were filled with hate, pure and undiluted, but I saw the fear behind it. She cared about her image more than anything. The thought of a public eviction was worse than death to her. You're a monster, she whispered. No, I said, standing up. I'm the landlord. I walked to the door. You have until tomorrow morning to sign the lease or start packing. Let me know. I walked out onto the porch. Uncle Mitch was waiting. He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, he smiled, a genuine, proud smile. That went well, he said. It's not over, I replied, shaking as the adrenaline began to fade. They're going to try something desperate. I was right, they weren't done. Sunday morning was dangerously quiet. I didn't sleep. I spent the night staring at the ceiling of my apartment, waiting for the other shoe to drop. My phone had been silent since I left the house, no texts from Ryan, no guilt-tripping voicemails from Mom. That terrified me more than the screaming. At 10:00 a.m., my phone finally rang. It wasn't them. It was my bank. Ms. Reynolds, this is the fraud department. We've flagged some unusual activity on your account. My heart stopped. What kind of activity? Someone attempted to access your main savings account using your old security questions. When that failed, they tried to authorize a wire transfer of $50,000 from a joint account listed under Family Emergency Fund to an external account belonging to a Ryan Reynolds. I closed my eyes. The joint account. I had forgotten about it. It was an old account, Dad, and I had set up years ago for medical emergencies. There was only about $500 in it, but it was linked to my main profile. Did the transfer go through? No, ma'am, we blocked it, but the attempt originated from an IP address located at. She read out my parents' address. Rage, hot and blinding, flooded my veins. They weren't just refusing to leave, they were trying to loot the ship before it sank. I hung up and called the police. Then I called Mitch. Meet me there, I said. Bring the locksmith. I arrived at the house 20 minutes later. The police cruiser was already there. I saw 2 officers standing on the porch, talking to Patricia. She was crying, wavy. NG her hands theatrically. Ryan was standing behind her, looking sullen. I walked up the driveway, the gravel crunching loudly under my boots. Officer, I said, I'm the owner. Patricia spun around. She's harassing us, she's trying to throw us out illegally, and now she's accusing my son of theft. I'm not accusing him, I said, holding up my phone. I have the fraud alert from the bank, attempted wire fraud, originating from this house, this morning. The officer looked at the phone, then at Ryan. Ryan went pale. I didn't, it was just a mistake. I thought it was Mom's account. It's a joint account with my name on it, Ryan, I snapped. You tried to steal from me, again. Ma'am, the officer said to Patricia. Is this true? Did he attempt to access her funds? Patricia faltered. For the first time, her script failed her. He needed money for a deposit on an apartment, since she's kicking him out. So you admit he tried to take it, the officer said. I want to press charges, I said clearly. Alice, Dad yelled from the doorway, he's your brother. He's a thief, I said, and I'm done paying for his crimes. The officers took Ryan aside. They didn't arrest him on the spot. It was a complex digital crime that would need investigation, but they took a report. They gave him a warning that terrified him more than I ever could. Then I turned to Patricia. "The lease," I demanded. "Did you sign it?" She looked at the officers, then at the neighbors who were watching from across the street. She looked at the house she had preened in for 30 years. "I signed it," she whispered, pulling a crumpled paper from her pocket. She threw it at my feet. I picked it up. It was signed. Patricia and Dad, no Ryan. "Good," I said. "Ryan, you have 24 hours remaining. If you are here tomorrow at noon, I will have you removed for trespassing. And given the fraud report, I don't think the police will be lenient." Ryan looked at Patricia, waiting for her to save him, waiting for her to fix it. Patricia looked away. She couldn't save him, not this time. Her power was gone. "You're a witch," Ryan spat at me, tears of frustration in his eyes. "I hope you rot in this house alone." "I won't be alone," I said calmly. "I'll be solvent." The next 6 months were a blur of legal paperwork and renovations. Ryan moved out that night. He crashed on a friend's couch for a week, then another, until he ran out of friends. Last I heard, he was working at a car rental agency near the airport, actually paying his own rent for a studio apartment. We haven't spoken since the day the police came. Patricia and Dad stayed in the house for exactly 2 months. They couldn't afford the $4,500 rent, as I knew they couldn't. They missed the second payment. I didn't scream, I didn't fight. I simply served the eviction notice. They moved to a small condo in Florida, the one they had always talked about but never actually planned for. It's small, far from the beach, and within their actual budget. Dad calls me sometimes, usually when Mom isn't around. He sounds lighter somehow, less burdened by the need to maintain an illusion. As for the house, I didn't keep it. I couldn't live there, too many ghosts, too much lavender polish and resentment. I sold it 3 months ago. The market was hot. It sold for $1.4 million. I took my original $700,000 back. I put it into a high-yield retirement account where no one can touch it. The profit, the other $700,000, I split. I gave half to Uncle Mitch's favorite charity, a legal aid fund for seniors, as a thank you. And the other half, I used it to buy myself a small, modern loft in the city. It has a view of the skyline. It has a kitchen I chose. It has a deed with only one name on it, mine. I sit on my balcony sometimes, drinking coffee that I paid for, looking at a view I earned. I am alone in the sense that I don't have them anymore, but I am not lonely. I am free. And honestly, that housewarming party I threw for myself last week, it was the best damn party of my life.